Let me begin this conversation quietly because the problem we're talking about rarely announces itself loudly. It doesn't arrive as failure. It doesn't look like collapse. It often looks like progress. You're doing the work, you're reading the books, you're listening to podcasts, you're trying to be better. And yet, somewhere along the way, self-improvement stops feeling like growth and starts feeling like pressure. Not external pressure, internal pressure. The kind that follows you everywhere, the kind that makes rest feel undeserved, the kind that turns every moment into something that should be optimized. At first, self-improvement feels empowering. You're learning, you're aware, you're intentional. It gives you a sense of control over your life. And for a while, that's real. It helps. But slowly, almost invisibly, the goal shifts. You're no longer improving to live better. You're improving to avoid feeling inadequate. And that's where the problem begins. There's a version of self-improvement that's about alignment, becoming more honest, more capable, more grounded. And then there's another version that's about correction, fixing yourself, policing yourself, never being enough as you are. Most people don't notice when they cross from one into the other because from the outside it looks the same. You're still disciplined, still productive, still responsible. But inside, the tone changes. Curiosity becomes judgment, growth becomes pressure, awareness becomes self-surveillance. You're no longer asking, what kind of life fits me? You're asking, why am I not better yet? And that question is exhausting. One of the reasons this happens is because self-improvement culture quietly replaces values with standards. Instead of asking what matters to you, it gives you metrics, morning routines, habits, benchmarks, timelines. Those tools aren't bad on their own, but when they become permanent, they turn life into a checklist you can never fully complete. There is always another habit, another level, another version of you that hasn't arrived yet. And so you live slightly behind yourself, chasing a future version that keeps moving. Money plays a subtle role here too, not just as income, but as comparison. You're not just improving yourself, you're improving yourself in a world where everyone else is also performing improvement. Success stories, optimization stories, productivity stories, and slowly, self-improvement stops being personal. It becomes competitive. You're not trying to live well, you're trying not to fall behind. This is where self-improvement turns into self-pressure. Because pressure doesn't come from wanting more. It comes from feeling that who you are right now is insufficient. And once that belief takes hold, no amount of improvement will feel like enough. You can always do more. Work harder, wake up earlier, be more disciplined, be more focused, be more resilient. But the more you do, the more the standard rises. And the finish line never arrives. This is especially common after your late 20s and early 30s, when life gets heavier, when responsibilities become real, when mistakes cost more. At that point, self-improvement stops being optional. It becomes survival. You're not improving because you're curious. You're improving because you're afraid of falling apart. And fear is a terrible foundation for growth. Fear makes you rigid. It narrows your choices. It turns every setback into a personal failure. Instead of learning, you start managing yourself like a project that can't afford delays. This is why so many capable, disciplined people feel chronically tense. Not because they lack direction, but because they've turned their entire identity into a work in progress that's never allowed to pause. Rest starts to feel like laziness. Contentment feels suspicious. Slowing down feels irresponsible. And that's the moment self-improvement stops serving life and starts consuming it. Here's something important that almost no one says out loud. A healthy life doesn't require constant self-optimization. It requires coherence. Coherence between what you value and how you live, between your energy and your commitments, between your pace and your capacity. Self-improvement breaks people when it ignores those limits, because growth that demands you override yourself indefinitely is not growth. It's erosion. You don't become stronger by constantly pushing against yourself. You become stronger by building a life that doesn't require constant resistance. This is where structure matters more than effort. A well-designed life reduces the need for discipline. A poorly designed life consumes discipline just to stay upright. If self-improvement is the only thing holding your life together, that's not self-development. That's structural debt. And like financial debt, it compounds quietly. The solution is not to abandon growth, it's to redefine it. Growth is not becoming more impressive, it's becoming more aligned. It's removing commitments that no longer fit, lowering standards that were never yours, letting go of the idea that your worth is conditional on constant progress. At a certain point, the most mature form of self-improvement is subtraction. Less pressure, less comparison, less self-judgment disguised as ambition. A life that feels right doesn't ask you to constantly fix yourself. It asks you to participate honestly. And honesty is harder than discipline. Because honesty forces you to admit when a goal no longer matters, when a standard no longer serves you, when the version of success you're chasing belongs to someone you no longer are. Self-improvement becomes self-pressure when it's no longer rooted in choice. So the real question is not, how do I become better? It's, what am I trying to prove? When that question is answered honestly, pressure begins to loosen. And when pressure loosens, growth becomes possible again. Not frantic growth, not performative growth, but sustainable human growth. You don't need to be optimized, you need to be supported. And a life designed for support will always outperform a life built on pressure in the long run. That's the difference between becoming better and becoming